What is up, guys? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video, and today I've got a really exciting video for you all. I'm going to be building the very best gaming PC build for $700 live, so you can see just how it's done. I'm also going to be running some live gaming benchmarks so you can see how it really performs in real time in the latest AAA titles and your favourite games. So without any further ado, let's look at the parts and get this system assembled. Now I'm actually going to start today's video off by looking at two of the most important components in any gaming PC build, the CPU and the motherboard. Now the CPU to start with is AMD's Ryzen 5 2600. It's the perfect choice for this build as it covers single and multi-threaded performance really well indeed. Now what do I mean by that? In terms of single-threaded performance, it's got a base clock speed of 3.4 and a boost of 3.9 GHz, meaning it's going to work really well in games that only really want to use one thread or one of the CPU's cores. CSGO is a great example of this, those older titles particularly. Newer games though, which can devour more and more cores, are also going to be right at home with this CPU. 6 cores and 12 threads make it a budget multi-threaded beast, and at the price point you really can't go wrong. It's also got a low 65 watt TDP, which means it's super power efficient, keeps it super cool, and also means we can use AMD's frankly fantastic included stock cooler made by the guys at Cooler Master to keep the CPU nice and cool, saving us a whole load of cash. Now in terms of the motherboard I selected, the best way to take a look at it is actually by taking it out of the box. A whole host of really great features on this budget-oriented MSI board, though for latest pricing I will link all the components, as I said, in the description below. The AM4 socket in the middle gives us good upgradability and future-proofing, allowing us to install a Ryzen 3, 5 or 7 CPU, any of those lineups, as well as a graphics card full-length PCIe 3.0 X16 slot, 2 memory slots for up to 32GB of RAM, and an M.2 slot, which is going to allow us to install a super fast storage drive if we so desired. You do also get some overclocking support on this board, not as much as the higher end units obviously, but we aren't going to say no to some free performance. Now taking the CPU out of its box, as I handily did earlier, allows us to install it, and it's super duper easy. Simply align the triangle on the socket with that of the CPU, lift up the arm, drop it in place, and it really is as simple and as easy as that. The next thing we're going to do is install our CPU cooler. We're just going to use the AMD stock cooler that comes included. It's quiet enough, it keeps the CPU cool enough. It's not going to allow for masses of overclocking headroom, but when you're trying to get the best price to performance and the best value, it really is the only option. Now that brings us nicely onto our next component today, which comes from ADATA, and it's their brand new XPG Spectrix D60G. Now this particular kit here is a 16GB kit, which is really important in 2019. Sadly, 8GB just isn't going to cut it anymore, and with memory prices falling pretty rapidly, it's a great time to build a PC. This kit from ADATA is RGB, and I know what you're thinking, James, that seems like a bit of a waste of money. In all actuality though, this kit is really no more expensive than say Corsair's Vengeance LPX, which of course doesn't have that RGB. Now prices are subject to change, but with memory prices being pretty low at the moment, now is a great time to build a PC. Installing RAM, installing memory is super easy. All you've got to do is find the RAM DIMM slots, the long ones, and pull back the clips on either one or both sides depending on your motherboard. Then line up the notch on the memory with the notch on the socket and clip them in. You're going to want to give it a little bit of force, but make sure you place the pressure evenly on both sides. And you'll hear that satisfying click sound. Simply repeat for as many DIMMs as you've got and jobs are good 'un. Now, believe it or not, that's basically half of our entire build that we've completed at this stage. We don't need this for now, so you want to put it somewhere safe, somewhere you're not going to tread or stand on it, because that would be quite catastrophic. Now, the next component that we're going to want to have a look at is the case, and we're going to prepare this, get it ready for the installation of our motherboard in a moment's time. This is actually the Sharkoon TG4, a case that's perhaps slightly lesser known than some of the ones from Cooler Master or Corsair. I'll link it in the description below, but it's got a lot of features for its really affordable price point. Not only do you have 4 included addressable RGB fans, which look a lot better on than they do off, support for a hard drive down the bottom here, support for your power supply, and actually a really nice aesthetic with dual tempered glass panels, one on the front and one on the side. It's a really great chassis. So the first thing we're going to do is take off both of the side panels and strip it down to make things a lot easier to work with. Now, every case that you get is going to come with some important accessories, including this very important bag of screws. Now, these are the screws we're going to need to install our hard drive, our motherboard and our power supply, so please do keep them safe. Now, talking of hard drives, that's the next component we're going to install. This is the Seagate Barracuda 1TB hard drive, and it's going to make up all of our storage in today's build. With 1000 gigabytes of capacity, you've got plenty of room for your movies, music, Steam and Origin libraries, and the 7200 RPM speed is as fast as your mainstream consumer hard drives tend to get. Now, yes, it isn't going to be as fast as an SSD, and if you can afford an SSD, I'd recommend one, but you need to get a hard drive as well to give you enough room to store all your games, movies, most frequently used applications, and that kind of thing. Now though, let's take out this bottom hard drive sled and install the hard drive. Now, in this particular case, installing the hard drive is pretty easy. Simply slide it into the sled and grab these kind of larger screws, the largest of the included, and simply line up the screw holes and screw it in. There really is not much to it. Now that our hard drive is inside our case, the next thing we need to do before installing the power supply, before we forget, is pop in this metal I/O shield. This is going to go between the case and our motherboard and can be a real pain in the arse if you forget to install it after you've installed your motherboard. So simply slide it in the back of the case, line it up with all the relevant holes and snap, snap. Yeah, pretty sure I think that's in. And that's all there is to it, it's in. Make sure you install it now, because if your motherboard's already in there, you're going to have to sort of start over again. Now, I mentioned the power supply, but what power supply have I selected for this build, and how exactly do we get everything wired up? Now, this is the Cooler Master MasterWatt 550. It's a really reliable 80 plus bronze certified power supply. 80 plus are an external organisation that verify the efficiency of loads of mainstream power supplies. It's semi-modular, meaning you only plug in the extra cables you really need, which keeps your cable clutter to a very minimum, and it's got really nice black rubber cables. They're not like braided or individually sleeved, but they are going to look a lot better than the ketchup and mustard affair often found on cheaper power supplies. Opening up the box, we find our extra cables that we can choose to plug in or not to plug in if we so desire, as well as our power supply with the pre-attached ones that we're definitely going to need regardless of our configuration. Now, installing a power supply is easy. Simply run all the cables through the back hole next to the power supply for now, and we're going to opt for a fan down orientation, meaning the power supply is going to pick up fresh air from underneath the case and exhaust it out the rear. Not all cases will have this option, so do be wary, you don't want to starve your power supply. Once again, it's a case of installing just a few screws, in this instance 4, one in each corner, and that's going to secure our power supply nicely in place and cause us no issues. In this build, we're going to need to install a couple of the extra included cables, the first being our GPU power and the second being a SATA power cable, so we can power up our hard drive down the bottom and the RGB fan controller, but more on that later. Alright then, with our power supply, hard drive and case all now ready, we can slot in the motherboard assembly as it's often referred to. Make sure you've got standoffs in all the appropriate places and slide it in, that's really all there is to it. Now you may have noticed that after installing the motherboard, I took the chance to plug in the 20+4 pin motherboard power header and the 4+4 pin CPU power cable as well, which is going to save us some time a little bit later. The next thing we're going to want to do is install our front panel connectors. You will want to refer to the manual, sorry guys, particularly for this stage, as it does vary on a build by build basis. And we're also going to do a bit of cable management with some cable ties, which I'm sure you can manage, so I won't hold your hand on that one, but roll the time lapse. Now then, with our cables nicely tidied away, at least for now, it's time to install the Gigabyte GTX 1660, which is the graphics card I opted to go for in today's build. The 1660 is a really good GTX 1060 replacement. The RTX 2060 performs much more like a 1070 Ti would, and this is a really fantastic 1080p Ultra and 1440p medium to high settings graphics card. This Gigabyte card is on the slightly cheaper end of the spectrum, but that's going to give you the best possible value for money. Comes factory overclocked, although not by a great amount, but as we say, every little does indeed help. Now, taking it out of the box reveals a fairly minimal but really quite nice wind force cooler, which is going to do a good job of keeping it cool, and the backplate, which is only plastic but isn't needed for structural reasons and looks, in my opinion, just as good as the metal alternative. We want to line the graphics card up with the slot on the motherboard, and then remove the metal PCIe covers from the back as appropriate. The next step is then to tighten the graphics card up with these retention screws and then run the 6+2 pin GPU power cable to give this unit some power and get it working. Now, with everything pretty much wired up and the background of today's video looking significantly worse than it did about an hour ago, the system is really starting to come together. All it now needs is a bit of time spent cable managing and making everything look super neat. But before we roll into the live gaming benchmarks, let's cue the montage of this system powered up and looking bloody fantastic. Right then guys, so it's now the bit of the video I'm sure you've all been waiting for. We're going to pop into some live gaming and see just how well this system performs. I'm going to take you over a couple of titles as we speak and then benchmark a few more games as well, just for the fun of it. Now, GTA 5 first of all, if we run through the graphics settings, you can see resolution is 1920 by 1080, as with all the games we'll be testing. And you can see here as well, everything is pretty much on high or cranked up to that kind of level. Now, as you can see from the actual visual look of the game, it looks absolutely fantastic. I'll have the frame rate counter in the top right hand corner of your screen for all the games, so you can see live how it is performing. But you can see we're hovering now, 50s, mid-50s, that kind of thing. I do want to, for a second though, kind of suggest you don't look at that FPS counter and instead look at just how the game is running. The visual quality and fidelity here is far, far superior to obviously what you'll get on a current generation Xbox One or Xbox One X console, and the same goes for Sony's PS4 and PS4 Pro. You could of course tone down the settings a little bit if you wanted to nail it at 60 FPS all the time, as I know a lot of people do. Ooh, awful driving from me there. But just that sunset, the graphics, it looks fantastic in my opinion. Now, it is worth noting, not to make too many excuses, that I'm playing GTA 5 here with a keyboard and mouse rather than a controller, which arguably makes me even more retarded than normal at this game. Can I say that? I think I can say it. I mean, I just said it. In terms of the peripherals I selected to use, I went for Cooler Master's SK650 low-profile mechanical keyboard, which is pretty snazzy. It looks like a Mac keyboard, but with the kind of tactility, that's a good word, with the tactility of a fully mechanical keyboard. And I've got this really expensive MSI wireless gaming mouse, which is actually really, really good. Low latency, but very expensive. I'm planning on doing a video soon, this versus like a $23 mouse, to really see what the difference is. So subscribe so you don't miss that one. Now, the odds of this going well are not high, but does that mean I'm not going to try it? Let's go. No, this way. Yeah, under. Yes. Fantastic. They haven't spotted me. I've gone incognito. Now, I'm aware every time I play GTA 5, I do this exact thing. Go to the airport, get a jumbo, and go, ooh, this isn't going to go well. Now, problem is, I don't actually know how you tilt up with the keyboard and mouse, which means I'm probably going to die. Oh, I died. I think that's enough of GTA 5, and we're finishing it on a nice 74 frames per second, so no complaints there. Right then, so the next title we're going to be giving a go is Apex Legends, and as you can see from my my level, not been playing very much, so this could be interesting. If we take a look at the settings, at the visual settings and the quality, I must admit the UI of this game looks so similar to Fortnite. In terms of video, running at 1080p, we've got VSync disabled, obviously, so that our frame rate isn't limited. We're going to be using TSAA, which is the higher degree of anti-aliasing. And we've also got pretty much everything else on high or enabled. So visually, the game should look really, really nice. Now, you could definitely play a bit of 1440p on this system, but 1080p really is the sweet spot, in my opinion. Mute squad. Thank you. Mute the squad. Yes, please. Don't want to be hearing all that rabble. Now, so far so good. This is looking really promising. We're tracking it between 90 and 100 frames per second. It can't really make its mind up at the moment. And visually, the graphics look absolutely fantastic, I must admit. There's one got a gun. Ah, yes. Oh, this looks like a quality piece of equipment. Yes, then. E for open. What else? Give me all the things. Give me all the things. Thank you very much. Now, I can't really use keyboard and mouse as an excuse in this game, so it's more of an advantage. So we'll see how this goes. No, where's the other one? I want this one. I want the devotion gun. What's a name for a gun? I mean, genuinely. I think up the DPI on my mouse a bit. That's a bit better. It's not tracking very well. We've got some interference on the gaming mouse, which is not what we want from a bloody £90 mouse. Oh, we've got a revival needed. We've got a revival. I'm coming, champ. Don't worry. I'm coming. Oh, I think she's gone rogue. Oh, wow. Oh, no. Where's that coming from? No idea. Oh, no. Oh, I've been killed already. This isn't good, is it? Oh, no. Now, as you saw there from Apex Legends and GTA 5, thankfully the system is a lot better at running games than I am at playing them. But I know what you're thinking, what about CSGO, what about League of Legends, what about Overwatch? Well, this system is more than capable of all those titles as well. 1080p is really where it's at, high settings with sustained frame rates over that 60 FPS mark. Older titles such as CSGO, World of Warcraft, League of Legends will exceed 100, 150 in some cases. 1440p gaming is definitely possible, but as I've said, sacrificing a little bit of resolution for a lot more frame rate and those highest quality visual settings is really a compromise that I'd be prepared to make. If you'd like to build this system and make this performance possible for yourself, I will link all the components in the description down below. If you enjoyed today's video though, give it a big old like rating and make sure to subscribe if you aren't already, so you never miss another GeekaWhat video, which I promise will be coming in less than 4 weeks time, unlike this one. Hit me up on Instagram, hit me up on Twitter, if you'd be so kind, it's at GeekaWhat and at GeekaWhat, and as always, wasn't that simple, we'll see you in the next GeekaWhat video. God, there's a lot of GeekaWhat, so I think people get the message, James.